This event centers Palestinian critical voices and expertise in rethinking Gaza's post-war urban futures. In contrast to the dominant international reconstruction discourse and Riviera-style schemes being proposed, the speakers we have here will interrogate how prevailing policies depoliticize Palestinian space and erase questions of sovereignty, healing, resilience, and restorative justice, while also drawing lessons from past post-war reconstruction efforts in Gaza. We will start with our dear Professor Beshara Doumani, who will be giving his welcoming and introductory remarks. Professor Beshara Doumani is the Mahmoud Darwish Professor of Palestinian Studies at Brown University. He is a historian of the modern Middle East whose works has focused on Palestinian history, dispossession, urban and social life, and decolonial approaches to reconstruction. He is the founder of New Direction for Palestinian Studies and former director of Brown Center for Middle Eastern Studies. Professor Beshara, please start our panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Leila, and greetings to all from Ramallah. I am thankful for this opportunity to introduce this webinar on behalf of New Directions in Palestinian Studies at Brown University. Organized by Dr. Orwa Switat, this webinar is but the first of a series of events this spring semester, including another webinar, Gaza Reconstruction and the Question of Justice, on April 7th, a Gaza VR exhibition at Brown University on April 14th and 16th, yet another webinar, Visualizing Gaza, Healing, Recovery, and Restoration, April 16th, and a lecture on April 27th by Dr. Switat, who will present his project, People in Ruins, Remapping Demolished Spaces and Displaced Narratives. All these events, in turn, are part of a larger research initiative inaugurated a year ago at the 10th annual NDPS workshop under the title Rebuilding Lives, Forging Futures. This initiative explores, from the bottom up, so to speak, how Palestinians reassemble their families, communities, and body politic in the face of a century-long process of territorial dispossession, demographic displacement, destruction of the built environment, and large-scale killing, including the Nakba or catastrophe of 1948 and the genocide in Gaza. Indeed, Gaza's shadow hangs heavily on all of us today. You may hear the roaring of warplanes and the sirens as I speak from Ramallah. And this series, like the mission of NDPS, tries to make sense of all of this by centering Palestinian voices in discussions about reconstruction, something that they unfortunately have gained great experience in over the generations. Indeed, the ongoing war in Gaza is the sixth one since the so-called pacification of Gaza in the early 1970s. And again, as I speak, Gaza's shadow hangs heavily over the world as a whole as the might is right logic plays out, brutally plays out. This is especially true in Lebanon today. Israel's seventh invasion of Lebanon, the first of which in 1978 was called Operation Litani, referring to the river, which many ministers, Israeli ministers today, are openly calling for to be the new borders of Israel. Over the past month, Israel has displaced 1.2 million Lebanese and begun systematically destroying the built environment from houses to hospitals in order to make their return impossible, much like what happened and is still happening in Gaza. I think if there's a single takeaway from this series and this initiative is that rebuilding lives under conditions of dispossession and shadow of death, generation after generation, becomes a practice of everyday life. It's not something that starts after wars end. And I think this is partly what we'll hear from our speakers today and in the coming events over the next few weeks.
Thank you, Beshara, for this very succinct introduction that frames the context we are in. It's my pleasure now to introduce Dr. Akram El-Ajle, who is a cultural heritage specialist and researcher from Gaza, actively leading emergency heritage protection and recovery efforts in Gaza. During the ongoing war, he has coordinated international expert teams to document damage, assess risk, and develop recovery strategies for historical building, archaeological sites, and cultural landmark across the Gaza Strip. I'm hoping that Mr. Dr. Ajle will be able to explain to us a little bit about how cultural specialists working on emergency protection and recovery in Gaza, what are the current key threats facing reconstruction, and how can Palestinian heritage-centered approach be mobilized within the reconstruction effort? Please, Dr. Akram.
Thank you, Dr. Leila, and I would like to thank you and for this introduction. Actually, as I mentioned before, I am so impressed that Professor Beshara Doumani are here, and he is the president of the university that I loved and I graduated from. So it's a great honor to be here on this panel, and good morning or good afternoon to the audience as well. And thanks to Dr. Orwa for inviting me for this very important and timely seminar. I hope that I can fit myself to the 15 minutes, and it's hard task actually. Today I want to frame Gaza not only as a humanitarian needs and a humanitarian crisis, but also as a cultural heritage emergency. I will argue that reconstruction is not neutral. It decides what survives and what disappears, and reconstruction is deeply rooted politically, culturally, and as well socially. So when we are talking about planning for Gaza, we are talking about not an empty space. We talking about landscape rooted for many civilizations, many thousands years ago. So I will start my presentation. Here go. This is just, I'm going to run about how many cultural heritage sites has been destructed in Gaza. 216 sites has been severely damaged in Gaza. Most of them are different values, highly values, significance, cultural heritage, and natural heritage. So it was deliberately the archaeological and cultural heritage sites and neighborhoods has been demolished or destroyed. This is Gaza. Gaza before 1995 used to be 565 kilometer, and then Israel in that time accused that many struggles men get in from Gaza to Israel, so they asking for a buffer zone. And this buffer zone cost us 200 square meter after 1948, 2 years after 1948. And this is Gaza 1967. And now this is the Gaza in September or October 2025. We are fitted ourselves in the yellow, only the yellow zone, 2,100,000 population are displaced to be in this yellow area with limited access to some yellow areas. So the majority of population are settled here or displaced here in between the sea and the blue zone. Just to know that Gaza and Palestine. It used to be 3,000th year and till 18th century, the route of spice route and the Silk Route to Europe and to between Asia and Europe and between Africa. Many different Canaanite sites has been destroyed. Here is a spectrum of archaeological sites in Gaza, and many of them has been destroyed. Here are also the Anthedon, the Hellenistic harbor, also has been destroyed with the Roman buffer zone or back of the Anthedon, and here underwater city has been also destroyed. Santi Hilarion, churches, mosque, Al-Omari Mosque, Al-Basha Palace and the museum. Now it's this is then the first strike, and the second strike completely demolished. So we are talking about museums, houses, neighborhoods, public buildings has been also destroyed, shrines, houses, museums, the gold market, which called the Caesarea, also destroyed, cemeteries, natural landscape, libraries, archives, and stores of artifacts has been replaced, also part of it replaced and stolen by Israeli soldiers. And here is Emek Shaveh, an Israeli archaeological organization, documented the stolen of the archaeology from Gaza to Israel by the military forces. And also this is a part of the Antidon. Mosaic churches has been destroyed. So now we are coming to the question of this seminar, heritage justice in post-war Gaza. So this loss is not on physical. It represents the erasure collective memory, identity, and centuries of cultural heritage. So it's the targeting cultural heritage. It was not a tactical, it was a strategical issue, which shows the continuity of this strategy since 1948, when the displacement of people from Palestine to refugee camps in Lebanon, Jordan, and Gaza West Bank. So it's a continuous strategy to replace people and to ethnically cleansing of the land. So it's a matter of distracting of collective memory and the social and cultural identity of the people. So the questions: who decides what is rebel? Which histories are preserved or neglected? How can displaced communities reclaim their cultural identity? So when we are planning and reconstruction efforts coming and plans, we have to ask ourselves these questions. And spatial planning, it's coming from bottom up, from people and local community to the planning, and it is not imposed by a colonial power to impose plans on us, and we have to accept. This will not be. This is a recipe for displacement, for exiling people, for pushing out factors of people's land. Reconstruction agenda now. Here is Rivera, Trump's Kushner Rivera, which is out of the anyone can imagine. It is not applicable. It cannot be built. This means that who's make these plans never knows Gaza, never knows about the built up areas and about people. Here is the U.S. master plan for Gaza. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cantons, and to move from one canton to another. So when we see this Riviera in practical on plans, it's 8 cantons, and to move from one canton to another, you have to have a permit. So only people can live in the yellow area, and in this buffer, in the green area, it is not a buffer zone. It is not agricultural area, but it is security issues to be controlled by Israel. And between each zone to another, there is gates, and there is a detail in the plan how these gates are working in. So it's completely erasing also the identity of people, identity of cultural heritage of people, the cultural heritage of civilizations, and the social identity of people. And here is another plan, the Israeli plan. They limited the Gaza, Khan Yunis and Rafah to be in this area, and Gaza and Deir el-Balah in this area. The blue is a security and army belt, and this green area will be used as agricultural for the Ashkelon Council, so it will be annexed to Israel. This will be a tourist annexed to Ashkelon, and this is a tourist area, will be connected also to Israel and industrial area. So only the Palestinians in Gaza can live in these 2 cantons, and to move from here to there, you need to have a permit, and to move from Rafah to Egypt, you need also a permit. And now this is the current status. This is the shocking plan, which is the Arab or the Egyptian Arab plan. And this Egyptian Arab plan, the first day they announced it, Mamoun, remember in that time, I made a campaign against it, and many people sent me to make me silent. I told them Israel knows plans; they will pick it and say we need it. And this plan is a completely portrait of the Kushner-Trump plan. So you are talking here about more than 60% of Gaza becoming is a buffer zone for security reasons for Israel. So Gazans will be in small cantons on erased Gaza and rebuilding a luxury high-rise building. So it's completely, unfortunately, it's a mirror of Kushner, or Kushner-Trump is a mirror of this plan. And this is another plan which might be realistic. It's Portland Trust Plan, with a participation from Palestinians, and it could be neoliberal. But in addition to it is neoliberal, but it takes the consideration of cultural heritage, population, agricultural, nature reserve, and taking every details of the Palestinian lives in Gaza. So whether it's neoliberal plan, but in another way, we can say it's acceptable to the Palestinian side. This is a new plan, has been reflected by a architect, a famous architect in Jordan, Rassam Badran. And I respect Rassam as an iconic architect, but unfortunately he failed to reflect the feeling or the planning principles of what had been written in El Finiq plan. El Finiq plan is a completely fantastic plan coming from up to down, from the down up planning, but when they ask Rasim to reflect it to a plan, it comes like in Dubai, filling the sea and islands in the sea, and more likely to be artistic space. Here is another plan, which is by the Gaza government. This is the Norwegian architects and planners who came to the Palestinian Authority since 1995 and developed the plans for Gaza. They lived in Gaza, lived with people, trained people, and they work on details and everything with people. So public participation was the major factor or the major pillar in this plan. And this plan has been developed by the Palestinian Authority, but it is more realistic and taking in consideration all the issues of cultural and social, economic situation, natural. So one can say it's a plan which comes from people. What do you see as the key thread? This is the question of Orwa, Dr. Orwa. What do you see as the key threads that the current reconstruction agendas pose to the Palestinian history and heritage? Thread one, tabula rasa, reconstruction. Like Trump Kushner plan, they thinking that Gaza we can make cleaning entire neighborhoods and rebuild all these neighborhoods by luxury and making gentrification, permanent forced displacement, and voluntary depopulation of Gaza on the long run, because people will not be able to live in this urban fabric, which is not a part of their history, not part of their social context. So, thread two, depoliticization, and here not talking about, when we are talking about planning, we are talking about politics. So in Palestinians in Gaza, the refugee camps in Gaza, we are talking about politics. And when we are talking about who will run Gaza, also we are talking about politics. So the issue of politics related to the land. So when the land will be confiscated and cleaned, that's mean we are going to lose our land. So Gaza, if we need to plan for Gaza, we need to plan for the people of Gaza and from a Palestinian perspective. External control. It seems that till now, external control over planning on Gaza, over which will be survived, which will be reconstructed, which will not be reconstructed, which building materials will get in, which building materials will not get in. So it's a completely Gaza now. Living under external control, but this external control is excluding Palestinians from rebuilding their own environment, risk producing spaces that is disconnected to the people. How can Palestinians' heritage-centered approaches be mobilized within reconstruction efforts? This is the second questions of Dr. Orwa, and I can tell you what's at stake. Since November 2023, 1 month after the war beginning of the war, we sit together, colleagues from the West Bank, volunteers, and Palestinians who are in diaspora, and we have decided to have the National Committee to Rescue Cultural Heritage in Gaza. We succeeded. And then 1 month after, we started to work together in saving or rescuing emergency response to cultural heritage under the war, under attack. So UNMAS, Cultural Emergency Response, UNESCO Cultural Protection Fund, REWAC, Palestinian Museum, Ta'awun, Alif, Gerda Henkel Berlin, Emina England. So Save Gaza Initiative, Municipality of Gaza, Municipality of Khan Yunis. So the idea of protecting our identity started like a snowball in Gaza. So it was very, very amazing when more than 60 workers working under the war, under the shelling, and protecting cultural heritage wherever they can do. And that was a great, we lost part of our colleagues who killed in this war, and part of them injured, but it's, it is the process, and all the governmental, non-governmental, international community understand that Palestinians already started to protect their identity, they keeping the continuity of cultural heritage, and they taking care of belonging, the same as what they are doing in parallel on a humanitarian crisis. So there is a humanitarian crisis. There are teams taking care of a humanitarian crisis, but at the same time, we have 7 non-governmental organizations from West Bank and Gaza working on protecting cultural heritage in Gaza. In Beit Lahem Center for Cultural Heritage Preservation also.
Thank you, Dr. Akram. I'm just cognizant of the time. If you can wrap
okay,
up.
I will finish. So heritage-centered reconstruction. Look, people here at El Omari Mosque, when they when we said when they get back to the old city of Gaza, they ask us, help us to clean the mosque, help us to make the mosque safe, despite it is distracted. Tell us where we can pray, where we cannot pray. So under Ramadan, thousands of people used to pray in Al-Omari Mosque and other mosques, built back with memory, not built back better, also built back with memory. Here, Edward Said Conservatoire, it's in every space in Gaza. And here is a person who has a story in Jabalia refugee camp. When the tanks surrounded the place that he used to make to conduct the classes for music with the children, he asked all the children to be together and to play music every day and to sing together every day, despite the tanks only 100 meter and less surrounding the place where the Edward Said Conservatoire playing. So this is activities, and this is the Edward Said headquarters. It's completely demolished, and now they have tents instead of the building. Here is Edward Said Conservatoire in 23 camps, displaced camp in Gaza, from Rafah to Khan Yunis, Zawaida, Nusayrat. In all the places you see children play music, singing in Gaza.
I'm really sorry to interrupt. Yeah,
yes,
it's
this
really
is
amazing.
yesterday. Heritage as a right. You see the souk and returned. Despite the souk is destroyed, people get back to souk and practicing there. Here, houses, they are near their houses in the street. They build their tents, the displaced tent, near their houses. That is the identity of a place. And here are people in the al-Jundi al-Majhul who displaced from the surrounded places, and they told, no, we are not going to this house. We are staying here near our houses, near our memories, near our social identity. Thank you so much.
Thank you very, very much. This was incredible. Thank you for the overview of the various plans, which I'm sure many people don't know, and also for pointing out the incredible resilience and determination of the Palestinian to build from the bottom up, and incredible organizations who are still protecting the heritage. I would like now to move to Mr. Mamoun Besaiso, who is a senior advisor to the UN and the European Union, specializing in conflict-affected areas across the Middle East and North Africa region. In Palestine, he was head of the national team for Gaza Reconstruction on the Palestinian government. And just before the war, he happened to be in Iraq as part of his work and couldn't get back. I would like to ask, drawn also from Professor Orwa, on trying to draw on your direct experience with post-war reconstruction in Gaza. How do you understand and navigate the tension between addressing urgent needs such as shelter, sanitation, health, the challenge of clearing the rubble and unexploded ammunition, and at the same time plan the reconstruction to build communities and the economy which are more resilient, community-based, and sustainable?
Okay, thank you very much for having me here. This is a really tricky question that we have been asking to answer this question over the past 15 years. Okay, and thank you for your nice introduction. Now, Gaza is a war-prone area. Gaza is a disaster-prone area for years. Over the past 59 years of occupation, Gaza witnessed only 5 years of calm. When the Palestinian Authority came to existence, we have 5 years of calm period where we have construction boom. Other than that, Gaza lived in continuous cycles of conflicts and de-development. This was deliberate de-development from Israeli Authority to prevent any sign of developing the country. According to Sarah Roy, she's a very famous author on the de-development in Palestine. De-development is the process which undermines or weakens the ability of an economy to grow and expand by preventing it from accessing, utilizing critical inputs needed to promote internal growth. So over the past 60 years, Gaza and Palestine in general was under de-development by Israel in different forms. Now this is Gaza. Dr. Akram talked about it. I will jump it. Okay, and now with the current genocide, October 7th, it's hard to imagine that direct victims who have 250,000. This equivalent to 12% of population. 12% is not easy number. Think of Egypt, 12%, how many million? Think of USA, 12%, how many million? This is a huge number. In terms of infrastructure, all numbers you see on the screen, 81% of all structure destroyed, wash facilities, etc., etc. This is a huge devastation in Gaza Strip. It's unprecedented in the history of Palestine and the area, and this will involve different paradigm of thinking. And now, because Gaza has chronic man-made disasters over the past 20 years, we hear so many terminology: relief, early recovery, resilience, rehabilitation, reconstruction, development, and all offers to bring to solve this puzzle, to start with what will come after what the sequence. This is the key question we have. The tricky question that do we build fast or do we build right? And it's very challenging because we're not supposed to select only one option, either to build fast, compromise quality, or to build right and consume more time. So it's about managing both through intelligent sequencing and system thinking. Because in Gaza, every short-term decision shapes long-term outcomes. And one of the very clear example in Palestine history that UNRWA came as a short-term temporary solution and became as a long-term permanent solution. So we learned that short-term may lead or end to be a long-term outcomes. In the past years, before October 7th, we dealt with different models. This is the famous old United Nations models for disaster management, starting with preparedness, and we have relief, early recovery, and then recovery. This is a transitional phase before going into development. This is the old UN model that we used in Gaza before current war, but now it changed completely. Also, we use another model presented to us by EU, linking relief, rehabilitation, and development. We use it in 1990s because that time development agencies, they thought that humanitarian aid and development project, every team operate in a different silos. There is a gap between them, so they are trying to link relief for with goal survival and rehabilitation, aiming to stabilization and development with self-sufficiency. We work on this model for years, and initially they thought about it as linear model, linear sequence, relief, then rehabilitation, then development, which is not the case because in disaster does not follow linear sequence. So the model we use that all three activities should happen at once: relief, rehabilitation, and development. And we work on that for years. We use UN model and we use EU. Now, the lessons learned out of this experience that speed is essential, but equality and dignity cannot be compromised. Of course, people lost their shelters, people are living in tents, people they need many things, but speed is needed, but not on the compromise of quality and dignity, which we are missing now in Gaza. Now, emergency response must be designed as the first phase of development. When we started emergency in Gaza, in our mind, we thought about development. The first very day when it became clear to us that a huge devastation that unrepresented in Gaza, which a huge challenge, we thought about the future. In Gaza, we have master urban plan, it's obsolete urban plan, we have so many slum area. We thought this disaster will create opportunity for us to redesign or to come with a new master plan, removing the slums. So from the very beginning, while we are feeling bad about destruction, but we thought this is opportunity, and we thought a lot how to convert these challenges into opportunities. Then after the year 2014, the international community in Gaza came to us with the Building Back Better concept. I'm not going to explain this in details. We work on the PPP, and the plan for reconstruction of Gaza at that time was built on the concept of building back better. It's not about rebuilding what was lost, correcting what was flawed, and the challenge that we have this time, how to move from short-term relief into long-term resilience, from isolated projects into systematic transformation, and from vulnerability to opportunity. So our plan for construction 2014 was built on this model, and we introduced many ideas that we didn't have before, like governance, community participation, etc., etc. Now, October 7th, it changed the whole scene. Everything is changed radically. We never seen such devastation and challenging and famine in Gaza. This is unprecedented. So that time, the UN came with a new recovery framework. All right. So this is the crisis happened here. So all phases to start at the very day: response, early recovery, reconstruction, up to here. So this line, we bring things as it was before. Then after that, we continue on building back, building back better, and then we will continue for building forward better, reformative recovery. So now in Gaza, what you see We see different actors, different stakeholders. Some of them are still working in disaster response, delivering humanitarian assistance. Some actors working on the early recovery. Some of them working on the recovery. All coming in parallel. And in the future, we are planning for the future. We have different reconstruction plans made by Palestinian ones, and we are hoping that we can implement these things. So this still is paradigm that all phases should continue, should start from the first day of crisis event until we approach the more resilient future. Now, how we navigate this tension? Now, sequencing, what must be done immediately? This is, of course, disaster response humanitarian, and what must be designed carefully. As I said before, the day some team was engaged in the humanitarian assistance, delivering shelter, food, and water to people. Other team of planners were talking about the future of Gaza, a new master plan, new projects that we never seen before. On layering, ensure every intervention contributes to long-term outcomes. For localization, this time we learned a lot that we need local ownership for the reconstruction. That's why we rejected all plans came from outside America, Europe, Gulf area. All plans rejected unless and until was designed by Palestinian ones. We have like one plan designed by the Palestinian Authority and the other one designed by called Gaza Phoenix plan. As Akram mentioned, we insist on the localization of Gaza reconstruction and also participation of the local communities. Now, of course, we need to have flexibility. It was a huge devastation. So this time, the UN adopted a model called area-based planning. Gaza divided into different areas, and each and every area has its own resources for reconstruction. So reconstruction will start in parallel in all areas. Because this is a theoretical solution. Unfortunately, Israel prevented that. But the idea, our reconstruction plan is to divide Gaza into areas, and each and every area we will start reconstruction in parallel so we can finish soon, and we will not wait for 70 years according to some estimates. And of course, accountability is very important. And we talked to some civil society organizations, and they establish watchdog for the reconstruction. Some volunteers, some CPOs to report any problem, any misconduct in the Gaza reconstruction, and we have so many people working on that. So the tension is not a problem to eliminate; it's discipline to manage. So tension is there between the humanitarian and the development. Now, what is the current status? I'm trying to avoid by the time. I have a few minutes. Now, what's going on? We have three aspects: humanitarian, reconstruction, and Gaza administration. I will start with the Gaza Administration Committee. It's established based on the UN Security Council resolution, and people were happy because they thought this administration will stop the war, will stop the genocide. All the committee members are good Palestinians, so there was big hope, and the hope was high, expectation high. Unfortunately, this committee was not enforced, was not empowered until now. The committee did not deliver anything to Gaza. Unfortunately, the committee did not deliver anything to Gaza. That's why people disappointed because they don't see any changes. A few months has passed since this committee formed, but nothing in the horizon. I talked to one senior member of this committee and some EU ambassadors, and our concern that this committee was designed to be like this. The committee designed by a Trump team to be like this, just name without any activity or without any support or without any empowerment, and this will be supporting Israel that Gaza will continue in this stage as a humanitarian for 4 years. On the reconstruction, yes, we have some activities on the reconstruction. This includes rehabilitation and maintenance of some clinics, some hospitals, some schools. opening some roads. Now, rubble removal started in Gaza months ago by UNDP, and they managed by local machines to manage rubbles, a few tons. They open many roads. So they are starting, but gradually. Unfortunately, Israel does not allow the entry of construction material. So what we have in Gaza now, recycled construction materials used, and some warehouses stored cement 3 years ago, and they are using it back. But of course, it's very expensive. One bag of cement costs $400. This is a small bag of cement. So we have some activities of reconstruction, and of course, with humanitarian, we have like 90% of activities are humanitarian, providing food, water, shelter, means tents to the people. So the situation in Gaza is like this on the ground, but behind the scene, now we have so many plans for the future. In Gaza, we think about the future. This is the most acceptable plan. This is Gaza Phoenix plan that Akram mentioned, and for the first time in Gaza, we have these ideas. Gaza Sea, we have sea taxi here. We have wind turbines. All these new ideas in Gaza we never seen, because when we start working on this plan with engineers from Gaza, West Bank, Jordan, Germany, different countries, we thought in the future. We thought that the destruction of Gaza is a huge problem, but it also create opportunity, and we take this opportunity to redesign the whole master planning, including some environment-friendly activities, climate change activities, some smart cities principles, etc., etc. And we are having some like sea taxi, wind turbines, electric charging stations, etc., etc. So this is in brief, in 15, that I answer your question, and I'm open for further questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this incredible overview that points up and emphasizes the Palestinian agency and the incredible thinking going into how planning for recovery in Gaza has evolved over the years, and the incredible work that people have been doing since the genocide, precisely to identify the needs, but also to emphasize the importance of how you nicely put it. It's not that we can eliminate the tension, we need to manage it, and we manage it by thinking of the sequencing, the layering, the localization, and the flexibility. And thank you also too for mentioning the Phoenix project and showing a plan of it to show again how Palestinians, despite Israel's insistence on eliminating them, is still insisting on doing what they can within what they have, explaining the problem with the Gaza Administration Committee that many people had some hope for and is being disempowered, but at the same time also people working on reconstruction and various activities within the limit of what they have. I'm gonna move now to Dr. Orwa Switat, who is our leader, our fearless leader in this issue. Orwa is a postdoctoral research associate in Palestinian Studies at the Center for Middle East Studies at Brown University. His research, he integrates digitization and visualization with discourse and planning analysis to uncover hidden histories, restore lost heritages, and investigate the counter-hegemonic planning practices and narrative to emphasize Palestinian agency. So my question to him is, how do you reflect on the repositioning of reconstruction from a Palestinian perspective? And in line of what we heard already from from Dr. Mamoun and Akram.
Okay, hi everyone. First, I thank you, of course, Beshara and Leila and Akram and Mamoun for your remarkable contribution, and I thank everyone for your presence. Actually, Leila, tell you the truth, from the first moment I saw the destruction of Gaza, I was taken back to the destruction of my own city, Haifa. I grew up in the old city of Haifa, and I learned through my childhood that dispossession was never a single event in 1948, but an ongoing Nakba that shifts from and that shifts different forms through expulsion, siege, fragmentation, economic disposition, and the aesthetic overwriting of the place. I also learned from the Nakba of Haifa and the Nakba of Gaza that destruction and herbicide are never total. Herbicide fails because people remain, revive, and endure. Yet it also constantly takes new shapes through imperial fantasies, imperial fantasies like the Riviera and technocratic reconstruction, or what we might call, all these imperial fantasies of Riviera. At the same time, these top-down reconstruction visions are met by Palestinian forms of reconstruction, like Akram and Mamoun showed us very, very explicitly, and it comes from below. But even these efforts unfold under the conditions of ongoing herbicide, which means they are repeatedly interrupted, constrained, and targeted. So this is the tension that I want to address today, and to ask and to raise the question how Palestinians use planning and spatial practices, not simply to rebuild what has been destroyed, but to resist ongoing herbicide and counter on continuing disposition. My talk begins from a simple but urgent proposition. When destruction is not an exception, but a governing spatial logic, reconstruction cannot be treated as a humanitarian post-war recovery or as a neutral technical act, especially in Gaza, of course, where we confront the management of life under ongoing herbicide rather than a finished post-conflict or post-war moment. So I approach this through what I call de-herbicide planning, a framework for thinking and rethinking the restoration under incomplete sovereignty and repeated destruction, which argues that planning must move beyond rebuilding damaged structures to confront the systematic targeting of the social, historical, and territorial conditions that make collective life possible. The literature on herbicide and disposition shows us that what is erased is not only the city as a built form, but also the cultural, social, and everyday life of the city, as Beshara also stated in the beginning in his introduction. In this sense, Yusuf Jabarin's concept of the architecture of disposition is especially useful because it shows that destruction is shaped by a political logic of excluding the Palestinian presence, an economic logic of accumulation by dispossession, and an aesthetic logic that legitimizes violence and hierarchy. Yet I would argue that even decolonial planning and insurgent planning frameworks have not fully captured how Palestinians continue to plan, to restore, and imagine and reimagine their cities and their urban life under the ongoing destruction and the ongoing counter pressure of repeated herbicide. The main objective of my study is twofold. First, to analyze Gaza reconstruction plans since 2023, and second, to theorize urban planning practice under conditions of ongoing herbicide. My data framework builds on Jabarin's framework of the three logics, but I used this framework as a base for and builds on it to understand the countering logics of the reconstruction plans, and analyze the different Palestinian plans and proposals, especially those developed by the Ministry of Local Government, the Union of Gaza Municipalities, and the Arab and International Organization and also Yalla Project as propositions to reconstruction. My main findings suggest that de-herbicide planning rests on three main dimensions. A political dimension of stateless spatial sovereignty, an economic dimension of communal healing and decolonial capitalization, and an aesthetic dimension driven by return and by concepts of restitutive heritage. Together, these dimensions also show that Palestinian planning under destruction is not simply reactive, right? It is future-oriented, just-centered, and grounded in the efforts to restore both urban life and collective presence. First, in relation to political herbicide, Palestinian reconstruction plans transform everyday spatial life into a form of cultural resistance in the space and produce what I call a stateless, urbanized spatial sovereignty. These plans locate sovereignty not only in the future state, but in present spatial practices, in housing, in rubble removing, in public parks, in the alleys, in the markets, in the ports, in the airports, in the infrastructures imagined to reconnect Gaza with its homeland, with West Bank mainly and Jerusalem. In that sense, planning becomes a way of making claims to homeland, to return to a national liberation, even under incomplete national sovereignty. Second, in response to economic herbicide, these plans seek to rebuild the local economy and the local community economy as a basis of healing, and to reconstruct and to restructure the land ownership based on the historical land ownership as part of a collective recovery. At the same time, they also mobilize tools of capitalization and free market development, but often within a decolonial agenda, countering the imperialist, purely neoliberal Riviera-style one. This tension is important because it shows that Palestinian reconstruction planning is navigating both the need for material rebuilding and the danger of reproducing dispossessive economic orders. Third, in response to aesthetic herbicide, the plans are driven by return and restitution as forms of justice, and by the restoration of demolished heritage. They treat ruins not simply as rubbles, but as the ground of their demolished memories, a lost beauty, and also a political concept of justice and a political claim. In this sense, ruins are understood as the material traces of a demolished and displaced city and an unfulfilled justice, while restoration becomes a way of reclaiming demolished heritage, rebuilding continuity, and resisting erasure. This is why I insist on the distinction between reconstruction and restoration. Reconstruction can mean replacing damaged buildings or restarting infrastructure, but restoration carries a deeper political meaning. It asks how relations to land, to memory, to the stone even, to the institutions, to land ownership, to the collective urban life can be reconstituted after systematic attempts of erasure and under ongoing also herbicide. What follows from this is that return must be understood not only as a legal demand or a moral principle, but as a planning principle, as a planning practice, as a spatial practice. Because if herbicide works by making return impossible through destroying your homes, landmarks, your historical monuments and heritage infrastructures, archives, and the social worlds that sustain everyday life, then restoration must rebuild the conditions that make return materially, spatially, and politically possible. A just plan is not only one that shelters people, but one that reopens the possibility of return, continuity, and collective life. So to conclude, where reconstruction fails under ongoing herbicide, de-herbicide planning becomes a political practice of rebuilding against erasure. It seeks to repair the material, spatial, and social conditions of the people, the nation, and its urban life, resist continuing disposition, and create the possibility of collective endurance and return under incomplete national sovereignty, a stateless sovereignty. And while de-herbicide planning shows that herbicide continues to mutate, and it also shows that herbicide never fully succeeds, because out of its failures, Palestinians continue to revive, remain resilient, and reimagine their futures through restoring their demolished memories, heritage, and the possibility of return to their ruined spaces. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Orwa, for this, for being on time, among other things, and for for leading us into the political question, which is a very important question. And you definitely build on what Mamoun and Akram said in showing how, okay, Palestinians are agents of their destiny. They are continuously facing erasure and resisting this erasure. It did not start today. It started already in 48 with the Nakba, and we are with this genocide in a new Nakba, a graver in terms of the price, that's all it took on the human lives and destruction, the magnitude of destruction, and it's also the first genocide that has been live streamed. But also we see Palestinian agency asserting itself while superpowers want to deny this Palestinian agency. A denial of Palestinian agency that we see already with the Balfour Declaration in 1917, a denial of Palestinian agency and presence also with UN Resolution 242 that denies Palestinian existence as something beyond a humanitarian problem, and how Mamoun and Akram talked about that Palestinians are not a humanitarian problem, they are a political identity and an agent defining their destiny and defying their erasure, an ongoing process. Now, in your presentation, Orwa, you talked about three concepts which are very political. I mean, I like how you built on the work of Yusuf Jabbareen, trying to talk about the three elements, how the Palestinian plans, both the Phoenix plan and the national government, the PA plan, talking about how the three central elements are being emphasized. One is what you call stateless spatial sovereignty. It's a very nice term. And the communal healing and decolonial capitalism as a form of decolonization. It's very ambitious, but very central. And the return and restitutive heritage as a way of reclaiming the origin. And I loved how you emphasized the restoration rather than just reconstruction. I hear in all this the importance and the centrality of the city versus the state. And I think this is how I would tie it politically, because the Palestinian national movement has been very much obsessed over the past 50 years with the issue of statehood, largely because having a state was the only way how Palestinians can assert their existence as a political entity and not like a humanitarian problem in need of a humanitarian solution. And as we all know, people hoped with also that a Palestinian state can be achieved. One could argue the struggle for a Palestinian state was to affirm the Palestinian struggle for self-determination. Of course, it failed. On the one hand, some people would argue today we have 157 states that recognize the state of Palestine, despite the fact that there is a destruction of any Palestinian sovereignty, material sovereignty. But what we see also is that the Palestinian state project achieved its objective. Many thought the objective was to actually decolonize the land and achieve the state in the West Bank and Gaza. This was not possible, largely because Oslo enshrined the settler colonial structure rather than dismantle it. But what is clear is the Palestinian state project achieved its goal. A goal not, on contrary to what many hoped to would be liberation, it did not provide liberation, but it did affirm Palestinian political existence, Palestinian voice, and Palestinian agency. But this project is over now, and it's over because Israel, with this genocide, proved again and again that the nation state is also a genocidal state, and the answer is not the state, the nation state. The answer is political agency and equality and justice. And I think what you're presenting here is, what I hear is how the city and restoring the city and rebuilding Gaza can give us insight in how we can imagine a different Palestinian future. A Palestinian future which is not tied with statehood, but one that emphasizes the sovereignty of the Palestinian people and the unity of the Palestinian people, the unity of the land, the people of the cause. The question is how to do it. And I think what is happening today in Gaza and all the plans for reconstructing Gaza are offering us a window into how this epitomizes a structural change, a juncture in the Palestinian history as important as the juncture of 1948, which changed the Middle East, but also changed our cause. I mean, don't forget, without Gaza, we would not have had this war. Without the genocide on Gaza, we would not have had this war on Iran. This war on Iran is going to change the Middle East. We don't know yet how, but it's also coming on the heel of the Arab uprisings, where also the Arab states, Arab people were challenging the state and the myth of nationalism as a solution to people's rights. And the emphasis is, how do we establish a democratic state or a democratic entity that emphasizes our equality and our heritage and our right and justice. And I think that the plans that you've all presented show how the Palestinian reclaim to the city and how we build the city, how we build it democratically. We built it as Mamoun showed with the question of how do we assert accountability, transparency, flexibility, and how by resisting and finding ways to resist the attempts to take away Palestinian agency, which we show with the Trump plan and the Kushner plan, we can, and by working on the ground, on the bottom up, not up bottom, we can establish that. This doesn't exclude the larger political question, but as you all know, the Palestinian National Project is in a major crisis. Like also in 1948, the Palestinian Project national leadership was completely discredited and vanished. And within 15 years, we had the PLO and we had a new leadership and we had a completely new project. Today, we're witnessing something similar, which emphasizes two things. One is that the old model we know does not work, but we also know that the Palestinian people exist and resist and are trying to rebuild their life, knowing that the Nakba is continuous, but also resistance and remaining on the land is continuous. But also we see how the Palestinian question, which also tried to make it a question between Israel and Palestine, returned to being an Arab question. People in Dubai could not have security if Palestinians don't have security and right. And the Palestinian question is again an Arab question, and the question, how can we mobilize it to achieve liberation? And that's the question we don't have answer for. But I think the plans for Gaza and the presenters today showed us how Palestinians are taking agency and trying again from the local to define the national. So the way we rebuild Gaza is going to determine how also we rebuild the Palestinian National Project. I think I'll stop at this point and offer a chance for people to ask questions, because I see that I already have a number of questions that people would like to ask. So is everybody on board? So first of all, the first question I have, which thank the presenters for powerful plans. Okay, the question is, in the face of the international support for Trump's plan, how likely do you think that these counter proposals and approaches will have a chance of being actually enacted? Yeah, who would like to answer this question? Then I have another question for Orwa.
I can contribute to this question.
Yes, please.
Yes, so far we have seen more than 15 different plans, including Riviera plan and Habtouri plan, and all these plans are fantasy. The only plan that we accept is the Palestinian made plan. Even we have some reservation of the Egyptian plan. And when we talk to the Egyptian authority, from pure technical point of view, the plan is not well defined, and they acknowledged to us that they were running short of time, but we accept the Egypt plan from political and security plan. So now there is consensus among international community that all these plans are not working well, and the international agencies working in Gaza, they abide by the existing master plan. For example, when UNDP is the most active agency in Gaza. They are working on reconstruction, opening the roads. They don't follow the Trump plan, Riviera plan. They don't follow even Egypt plan. They follow what is Palestinian told them. Every day we have meetings, municipalities, UNDP team, Palestinian authority, and we are having our own plan in the field. So we deal with this Trump Habtour as fantasia, not unreal. Palestinian agency dominate and we plan and we execute as we think is better for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this answer. Yeah, I totally agree with you. The Trump plan is fantastic, and it's enough to see how Trump says anything says it will not get materialized. So I mean, we've heard so many plans of Trump. It's not going to go anywhere. Everybody is just buying time. But I think in this juncture where our historical moment and we are at a juncture, both as Palestinians and as the region, where everything is going to change. Like in 48 happened, and within 4 years we had Abdel Nasser in government. We had various coups in the Middle East. We had the rise of the national Arab state. Okay, today we are in a completely different context because the nation state, it has become an authoritarian state, but they're not very stable. And the Gulf state that thought that now they have the moment to define the future and the city, right? They are now being attacked. So that's also a question which is very important. But as you point out, what is important is what's being done on the ground. And I'm happy to hear about the UNDP still being involved and listening to the Palestinians, because we, the Palestinians, exist and are apparent in ways that in 48 we were not so visible. And the people of Gaza in particular are very visible. Yes, you have something to say.
Let me add something like for the rapid removal plan. This plan developed inside Palestine, inside Gaza, and we are following it. The damage assessment plan was designed in Gaza, and UNDP is following this. So
Yes.
all local plans we are doing by ourselves. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. This is very important to emphasize because people sometimes are not aware of it and they think always that the expert from outside tell what is inside, but no. Thank you. Now, Orwa, there's a question for you. Can you repeat and unpack the proposition you put forth at the beginning of representation when destruction is not the exception? Thank you. I mean, that's the brilliance of Palestinians, right? Resilience, But
so it's resilience in a way that these plans, and the reconstruction plans, we take it as Palestinians from the fantasy world to a framework a spatial framework, a political, spatial, economic, and also driven by our ideologies of justice and our also concepts of return and restoration of what got demolished, and also restitution and taking back what is ours. And I think that this planning framework, like this shift that we do through the same title of reconstruction plans, right? But if you dig into the reconstruction plans, the Palestinian plans, you will see it is a framework, a spatial framework that organizes our resilience, our return, how we see our spaces, how we can incrementally also rebuild and reconstitute our lives after it got shattered to pieces. So the idea is that herbicide is ongoing. I because of that, I started from Haifa, right? Because from my neighborhood, from my city, and connecting the Nakba of 1948 to the Nakba of Gaza, I think it's really, really important. And of course, in between, we have Nakbas in West Bank and different shapes of herbicide and displacement and ongoing disposition. So the idea to analyze how Palestinians, through planning, counter the architecture of disposition and the herbicide came from the practice of the daily practice of the Palestinian around reclaiming their spaces, from also using planning policies and strategies in order to get return as the main objective. But still, it's stateless, it's incomplete, it's failed. So the Palestinian reconstruction is also failing because we have ongoing herbicide. So this dynamic, out of failure, we are, out of the rubbles, we are rebuilding ourselves.
But that's also the history of the Palestinian national cause. I mean, people forget, 48 Palestinian people thought Palestinians don't exist. And then 67 happens, another major catastrophe. And then we have the Battle of Karama. And Beirut happens in 1982, that was the worst war. And then they vanish, and then they come back again with the first Intifada. And then also happens, and, it doesn't go anywhere. And then so the Palestinians have politically gone from, negation to assertion, and we are now in an assertion. But what is very beautiful, what you're all saying, how much the urban space is very important. and how rebuilding Gaza can give us in this post. I mean, the state remains always important, but I think we've all become aware that how you build the state is going to matter, and the city can provide a mean to how we think of how you rebuild through resilience, how you rebuild constructively, building the community, building the economy, that it's an integrated process rather than as it was 20 years ago, as Akram or Mamoun explained, that it used to be, recovery and development. And then we understood that there are much more stages.
And Leila here, like just a sentence that when I interviewed Palestinian planners in Gaza, so their starting point, and you saw that also from Mamoun and Akram, also presentation, that their starting point that genocide will continue and the war will return and we won't have an independence. So under this setting, what can we do?
Yeah, build, but as we rebuild, as we restore, we're also building something new. We are going also politically into something new. We still do not know it, but we cannot know it without building it. Okay, I have another question, which is Gaza's supposed reconstruction is also taking place alongside planned elections within the Palestinian Authority, who the Palestinian plan assumes will control Gaza. Is this actually feasible? What are Washington's desire for the Palestinian Authority during this time of reconstruction? Will the PA actually endure such a transition? This is a very long question, so I don't know who wants to have a...
It's for you, Leila, I think.
It's for me? I don't know if Akram or Mamoun would like to address it as well, which is, how can this take place along planned elections within the Palestinian Authority? Do any of you want to?
I can contribute. Now, these elections are not political election. It's not election of the president or the parliament. It's for the municipalities in the West Bank and only one in Gaza. So it does not have much influence over the reconstruction. So this is just for the municipalities. Now, for the PA role in the reconstruction, historically, PA consider itself as the only legitimate authority over Gaza Strip. However, this time is totally different. Israel refused to allow PA to return back to Gaza. That's why during the negotiation with the Egyptian, they came up with an intermediate solution to put a committee, to bring a committee to serve for 6 months temporarily for the Gaza reconstruction. Then PA will take power. But now they changed the committee to be for 2 years. So now the coming existing Gaza administration committee is mandated for 2 years. And after 2 years, we don't know if PA will come back to Gaza or this committee will renewed again. So unfortunately, PA is somehow disengaged from Gaza reconstruction.
Yes, and the PA has been completely marginalized by Washington. I mean, it was not consulted with the Trump plan. There is no recognition of the Palestinians. So I think, and also what we're seeing in the West Bank is happening is de facto annexation of the West Bank. So the Palestinian Authority might end up just with some control over 20% of the West Bank. So there is serious question of how far the Palestinian Authority, as we know it today, will endure this phase. And I think also with the war in Iran, it will be further weakened. So Israel is interested in having some administrators, but also Israel is interested more in having maybe municipal administrators. And the Palestinian Authority's role as a police force, but there is also still the problem that not a problem for Israel, but not for the Palestinian. The Palestinian Authority and the Palestinian state is recognized internationally as the agent speaking for the Palestinians. So the question will be, how will it be reformed? But in this phase, we still don't know what's going to happen within the next 2 years. And that would be my
Leila, if I can add for this question, actually, it's the authority is not given by Washington or by any other external bodies. If we having a Palestinian the desire and we have the passion to be engaged in ruling Gaza, Mamoun and I, we are in a group that we constitute in a group, formed a group called Save Gaza Initiative. And since 2 years, with my colleagues, also Norwegian colleagues also participating with us, encouraged the Palestinian. We conducted many meetings, a number of meetings with the leaders within the Palestinian Authority. We contacted high decision makers, high-level decision makers at the Palestinian Authority. And we tried to push them within the war. Please, you have an opportunity to have the role. We can help you. We are volunteers. We have a contact with the people. We have a contact with 27 emergency committees on the ground. We have in contact with them every day, all the night. We used not to sleep in contacting with decision makers in Gaza, with everybody. And when we used to ask them, please, there is a opportunity, they used to tell us, unfortunately, this is not our war. This is not our war. So at the end, we won. And Mamoun is here, he can ratify what I'm saying. We won them. We told them, you will find themselves on the margin at the end. If you are not engaged now, and we wrote to them plans. Mamoun and I and my colleagues, we presented many plans for them to encourage them to take the responsibility. And we used to have contact with people in Gaza, and we talk with professionals, the parties, and all of them told, we need the Palestinian Authority. They are welcome here. But to tell you the truth, that after the war stopped, people in Gaza having injured from their side for the silent of 2 years and not engaging even to speak more openly. There was many European countries who tried to send the money to the municipalities of Gaza, but they cannot work directly with the municipalities without the PA organizations. And unfortunately, the PA refused to intervene in Gaza during the war, and they stepped back. That's make the opportunity for the externals to get in. So if the Palestinian decided to do something, especially in Gaza, with the people,
but I think you're proving the point that the Palestinian Authority, unfortunately, has made itself irrelevant. It lost legitimacy in Gaza, but it also lost legitimacy in the West Bank.
Yes.
Okay. So the only thing sustaining it so far is Israel's interest in yes or no. And we don't know where this is going. So we are again the same question like in 48. Haj Amin al-Husseini was not up to the task, but he was not a traitor. That the PA did not really step up to the historical moment. It's becoming irrelevant. I agree. Okay, there's another question which is actually quite relevant. It says, what can international civil organizations do to support the Palestinian-led reconstruction and restitution? I think it's a very good question. What do you think international civil society organization can help?
It's not only the civil. If Mamoun, can I answer, please?
Go ahead, please, Akram. Go ahead.
Not only the civil, international civil organizations. There are many countries who now trying to deal or would like to work in Gaza on the basis of non-state actors.
Yeah.
Non-state actors in Gaza. There is no states. So on the ground, for example, the Norwegian have NRC, UNICEF, all the UN organizations, all the different non-governmental organizations. For example, in cultural heritage, we have more than 6 international organizations who are supporting directly the non-governmental organizations in Gaza to protect cultural heritage. And they investing not 100,000, they investing millions to rebuild all cultural heritage in Gaza. So the French government, AFD, also have 10 million euro to protect cultural archaeological sites. And the British Council, so there is, it is not a proposal, it's ongoing on the ground. They are dealing directly with non-governmental organizations and not only international civil society associations and NGOs, but also governments like European countries dealing directly in Gaza under non-state actors.
But you're saying basically that they can help in reconstruction, in saving the heritage, in building. Mamoun, do you want to say something to that, or shall I go to the next question?
Just one statement. Most of the work now carried out in Gaza is carried out by NGOs, whether international NGOs, Arab Muslim NGOs. That's why Israel put restrictions on these NGOs, because they see their impact on the ground. So yes, all NGOs are welcome to work in Gaza.
And to help in all areas. Okay. In your discussion about reconstruction in Gaza, how can we also address the situation of refugee camps in the West Bank, especially in Tulkarem? Given the ongoing destruction and instability, what approaches can ensure meaningful and dignified reconstruction for residents, while recognizing that these camps are not their original homes, and while still persevering and supporting the right of return?
Yeah. If I relate to that shortly, I think, the refugee camp also poses a big challenge, a deep conceptual challenge, also in Gaza reconstruction, right? Because it's a challenge for the concept of restoration. Because on the one hand, we don't want to reproduce refuge and campness as the horizon of Palestinian futures. On the other hand, people want to restore their community, their ties, their everyday life in the camp. We call it camps, but they are since more than 70 years. So the herbicide planning in that case, I think, has to hold this tension, like treating the camp as a site of communal healing, stateless spatial sovereignty, and restitutive heritage in the present, while planning materially and symbolically toward a just future, a future beyond the camp, through return and through restoration. I think.
Yeah, but I'm going to push back on that. Okay, yeah. So, practically. Okay, let's be practical. Okay, so the camp as a mean to restore the community, right, and as a place of healing, as you rightly said. But then, how can you go beyond the camp? And Gaza is a very good example, because many of the camps have been completely destroyed, right?
Yeah, there's a huge debate. When I interviewed also the planners in Gaza and also analyzed the plans, there's a huge debate around that. How the debate was settled in a way to create a framework of negotiation between the community and the Palestinian planning authorities, let's say, or the planning bodies, organizations. And they left it, let's say, to the decision of the people. So every community has the right to decide that, and to create this form of taking a collective decision, maybe, or negotiation. And of course, there's a lot of reproducing of hierarchies inside the community in that term. But this is a big challenge to address, because these refugee camps are also part of the community resilience that was created throughout the years. But in the same time, you can't reproduce that when you build a just future, even as a concept that drives planning. So there's a challenge here. I think it's unsettled, and how it's being dealt with is to create a framework of negotiation around it.
Okay. So, Mamoun, another question.
I can add to this. Refugee camps, not in West Bank, but in Gaza. We discussed this with community. For example, Jabalia refugee camp. It's a slum. It's the road between houses only 60 centimeters. So we talked to the community as an example, and all of them, they agreed that for the reconstruction of Jabalia, we will not bring it back as is. We will not bring the slum. We will not bring the asbestos and metal sheets. We will construct new buildings. However, we will keep the memory of the people. We learning from the experience of Nahr al-Bardawi in Lebanon. They made the reconstruction, modern construction, but they keep the memory. This is the shop of Mr. X, this is the house of Mr. Y, and this is the consensus in Jabalia camp, and we brought this forward to other refugee camps. Yes.
The
Thank you
same
for
had happened to Jenin camp in 2003, and when the United Arab Emirates funded the reconstruction of the camp, they rebuilt it on the same structural plan. There were a lot of developments since 1948 to the refugee camps. And the refugee camps in El Amari, for example, in Kalandia, not the same the refugee camp in Nur Shams or in another or the middle area of Gaza. We have only 4 camps who are affected in Gaza. We have 8 camps, 4 affected, and 4 are safe. So it's when we are getting back to the identity to Gaza and to the refugee camps, people know well their roads, their properties, and despite that Israel destroyed the land authority archives in Gaza, fortunately that we have backup. Everything have a backup and stored in Jordan. So everything now it's open, worked well. So all the plans, everyone knows his plates, piece of land, and the structural plan. How to build? It's as I said, it's development. The places that you used and 20 years ago as asbestos. Now it's 4 floors building, concrete building. But we kept the structural plan as a memory. But the memory in the camps, for example, sorry, for more clarification, that the camp is divided till now about the origin of the people. So Hamamiya, they are from Hamama, living together in their quarter. Majadla from Majdal, living together. So the identity of social network reflected in the identity of space, rather than if we built in concrete or asbestos or whatever. The memory is still, these houses still have their Kushan certificates of land. They still keeping the keys of their homes with them, homes in 1948. So Muftah al-Auda retain key with them. So this is the identity of the camp, more than if we offer sewage system to the camp or not.
Yeah, totally right. Okay, unfortunately, we are up. Our webinar has came up to its time. I cannot thank you enough. I cannot thank our speakers enough for this amazing presentation, very informative, very engaged, and emphasizing the Palestinian agency and Palestinian, how they imagine decolonized reality despite the ongoing genocide, and building while deconstruction continues in order to stop deconstruction. I would like to thank everybody, and also to remind you to check again the events for the Center for Middle East Studies and join us for the upcoming events in the series and webinar. The next meeting is going to be about the question of justice and visualizing of Gaza's healing and recovery. Thank you very much, everybody, and hope to see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.